to Gab and Jam, episode 151.
All right. What are we talking about today?
Okay, this topic is adjacent to a topic that's taken us 30 years to figure out.
Right.
But it's that thing that if you're the pretty girl, you're forgettable. But if you're ugly and you have that feature that kind of really that people remember that.
Right.
So more interesting is more important than beautiful. So our
Yeah.
topic today is I'd rather be awful than be blah.
Right. Yeah. So meaning that I'd rather have a ton of horrible reviews than to not have any reviews at all.
Right.
Because if someone could be apathetic about you, then
that's not
right. So we're just watching this documentary on Norman Lear, and they were talking about All in the Family.
Yeah.
And they said, when CBS was talking about, the first episode of All in the Family is getting ready to make its debut, they say either it's going to be like completely horrible,
right,
or it's going to be the greatest thing ever.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
Is that, and so they were talking about the seismic event that happened with All in the Family and what it did for television and how it changed people's lives and things like that. And that's the reason why we had that thing of saying, hey, I'd rather be awful than to be blah.
Right. So there are 5 points. Actually, I added an extra 5 points to consider. And actually, this contradicts what Les Brown said on a recent episode of Every Day is Saturday.
Right.
On his latest interview with Sam Crowley, he said that the most important thing that a rock star could have, or a person building their own business could have, is talent. He said the ability to communicate, the ability to tell a story. And this goes directly against that. So here are 5 points to consider for being memorable rather than being perfect.
Right. So now this is where I'd like to kind of jump on to say, I guess it depends on how we're saying that.
What do you mean?
So meaning that if we're just talking about the ability to tell a story,
right,
I don't know if that has anything to do with necessarily musical talent.
Okay.
So meaning that I think that does kind of go with being awful. So let me explain how that works. Okay, so let's think about movements, right? So we start our number one. Movements are created from being awful.
Yes.
Right, and I would say that the reason why is that even though people think they're awful, they are telling a story.
Okay.
So meaning that so if we think about jazz, right? Yeah. Jazz first started, people were talking, it's not music, it's blah, 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 whatever else. That's one level, right? Then once jazz kind of had its foothold and everything else, here comes rock and roll, right? Same type of thing. It's awful. Hey, they're using 2 chords and that's all they're doing. But they're always telling a story, right? Yeah. Then let's say after, bloated rock kind of happened, then what do you get? Punk, right?
Right.
And again, they're telling a story, fuck the establishment. That's the story, right? So then, once again, I think maybe all of them are saying it, right? All along the way, they're all probably saying the same thing. Yeah. Because then, right, after we come through the glitzy 80s and all the rest of this kind of stuff, all this, great music in the 80s, what happens? Hip hop, right? And once again, they're saying, what? Fuck the establishment.
Yeah,
again,
true.
Every time they're giving this finger to the establishment. Yeah. So, but, each time there's this lack of appreciation for what these people are doing.
Especially from the critics.
From the critics, from musicians. Hey, I'm one of them. I was one of the music snobs that was coming up during the 80s that was like, hey, I spent all this time playing guitar, learn how to play keyboard, learn a little bit of keyboard, learn how to play, bass and all that kind of stuff. And what? Somebody gets to sample something and make a gazillion. What is this?
Right.
So I get it. I understand it, but that's kind of the way things happen. Right. So you are right in the sense that talent, in the way that you might see it, right, doesn't necessarily equate to success. Yeah. As I can understand the whole thing, you do have to have that ability to tell a story to connect with people. Right. I think that's may have been where he was going with.
Yeah, and I think so, but that alone is not going to do it.
No.
But back to what you were saying, one of our points is that movements are created from what people consider awful, because early on the critics just don't get it. We just were listening to the Prince, the book, the Prince biography from the guy, and he was saying that Minneapolis didn't accept Prince and a lot of other Minneapolis natives who had to go find their fame elsewhere and come back because the critics, and even still, even once he made it big,
right?
The guy was saying that Prince still was not treated well by the local critics and music critics and journalists.
Still wasn't treated, the way that you would think that he would have been treated locally, right? And even just a thought that I had, I would have thought that in Minnesota he was king, because I know, like in Detroit, he was definitely
he was king, right?
One no doubt about it. So I was thinking, if he's getting this in Detroit, he must be really getting it in Minnesota.
His hometown. Plus, he seemed like he loved it. So
right.
All right, so the second point to consider when being memorable rather than being perfect is, again, you remember, and this goes back to probably the news cycle, this goes back to reviews, that a lot of times it's your awful experiences that you remember and that you tell other people.
Right.
So it's not so much, and I still say that with our daughter, when it comes time to share something from, to hey, have you heard so-and-so? It's usually something awful. Here, listen to how awful it sounds, or listen how bad it is. I'm like, why are you, and I mean, not that she doesn't share good stuff too, but I would say the ratio of sharing what she thinks is awful versus what she thinks is great is probably double the bad stuff. Right. Like, oh, look how stupid this is. Like,
and we have to understand that during this election cycle, I think we probably seen that epitomized more than anything else. Because I think truthfully, most people who voted for Joe Biden were not motivated to vote for Joe Biden. They were motivated to vote against Donald Trump.
Right.
So that was the awful.
Right.
And then, you had the people who were motivated to vote for Trump because they thought he was the greatest thing ever. The greatest president ever. So that's certain people who are motivated to vote against him because he was the worst president in history. And then other people who were motivated because he's the greatest one in history. And I think that epitomized it more than anything. And then in this election, we had the most votes cast ever. And then it was an epitome of everything else. We're in the midst of a shutdown. There's really nothing else going on. So, people couldn't be distracted by other stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
This was able to really kind of elevate. So it was just a perfect storm of that. That Donald Trump epitomized the great and the awful. Together in one. So I think that really...
It helped create a movement. I mean, it has.
It against and for. He did both. So, in that sense, Mr. Trump, you should really be happy about that.
I know.
There's one thing that you can really take solace in, is that you were the first candidate in history to motivate more people to vote against you than for you. And you voted a hell of a lot of people to vote for you.
Yeah, that's true.
Way to go, Sarah. Awesome, Jack. So.
All right, number 3 for points to consider for being memorable rather than perfect is, as long as awful is a sincere expression of something deeper, then there is a sustainable future for it. So as long as you're not just jumping on the bandwagon, which, I bet back in the 90s, we found ourselves doing a little bit with the rap thing. We have the Lost Rap album, which you'll never hear. And, just that people jump on movements just to, the punk or whatever else, just so they can say, hey, I'm hip and cool even with the underdogs. But if they don't really feel it, if it's not there.
It's got to be sincere. Because I think, something that might have epitomized it. But I think during the punk movement, and this is what I think may have helped the police. So, like, the police jumped on the punk movement as it was coming. But there was another movement that went along with the punk movement, which was the new wave. So there was new wave and there was punk. And I think it was kind of like new wave were people who were looking for something that was edgy, but with a little bit more musical sensibility. Because I think I was more of a new waver than I was a punker. So
they kind of rode the coattails.
They were able to slide right into new wave and not necessarily go into punk. It's sort of like the Prince Dirty Mind album is probably more, it's got a little punk sensibility to it, but I think it epitomizes more new wave than it does punk. So
even though the branding with that black and white cover was very punk.
Very punk. Very punk kind of branding about it, but that was the thing about punk and new wave. And so that kind of allowed people who had a certain amount of musicality about themselves to slip into the punk movement without having to say, hey, I'm a punker.
Right.
Because you could be a new waver.
Right.
You know, so that kind of helped out for that. You know, Blondie, some of the other groups that, you know, seem like as they start to get a little bit more musical, a little bit more.
And then more sexy, more, I guess, just more polished.
Yeah, more of a pop sensibility, for lack of a better way of putting it. There was this new wave category that kind of saved for that, you know. But early on, hip-hop, it really didn't have that, you know. So
hip-hop was built from the ground up, even though, you know, Gil Scott-Heron's been here all along, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. All right, the fourth thing to consider when deciding whether to be memorable rather than perfect is back to what we were saying before. Who says it's awful? Usually it's people who are establishment, mainstream. They don't get it. They have no vision. So a lot of times that's not even the person that you really care about. You know, appealing to.
And again, the people who these individuals were telling their stories to, they enjoyed it. You know, like the block parties, things like that, that hip hop kind of grew up in the street. They enjoyed it. And so then all of a sudden, as far as, you know, it kind of going out to the mainstream, you know, they had no... They didn't think to themselves, okay, they're not gonna like it, or you know, I don't even know if they care. It was like if they don't, then I can do what I'm doing.
Or you know? The other option was sometimes they wanted, like we were talking about before, they wanted to get that explicit and the parental advisory sticker back when that came out. It was like, okay, they were on a mission. Like, I want the establishment not to like me so that I can get this sticker. I want to be considered so far out there. You know.
That's the thing too. And that's the same thing with the punk movement. It's like you're playing clubs, you're doing the rest of that stuff. As far as you know, you are accepted. You're accepted by the audience that you're telling your story to. And to the extent that it then goes on to something else, like the Sex Pistols or something else, you know, then they have to accept you for what you are. Because you do what you do. You know, but, you know, I think they were talking about Elvis Costello when he was first on, Saturday Night Live. You know, he had a certain song that he was supposed to do. And, you know, in the middle of that song, he started the song. And in the middle of it, he said, oh, no, radio. And so he played the song Radio.
Oh, wow.
From that point, you know, he was banned from Saturday Night Live.
Oh, wow.
But that banning helped him. So again, you know, you know, Saturday Night Live was cutting edge. You got banned from cutting edge. So that really kind of gives you that thing. You know what I mean? So it was an awful thing to do.
But that's what made it memorable. I didn't even know that. So now I'm learning something new. And then finally, this kind of ties back into the last couple points. Last point to consider when considering whether to be memorable rather than perfect is what is lost when you're perfect. Who are you trying to please, and where is the you in that? I mean, is it something you're really, you know, again, you have to feel it if you're trying to be perfect, because perfect usually means you feel there's some type of insecurity that's apparent to me when you're trying to be perfect, because usually there's a set of standards. And so the question is, again, deciding, okay, who I am, is that important for me to line up with, you know, whatever the, you know, I guess for us, genre.
I think that kind of goes to the Miles Davis way of looking at stuff. So that I think, you know, he felt like that too, that there's a certain amount of line that goes along with the perfection. So what I'm saying by that is that he didn't rehearse the band. You know, it's like, you know, it was, you know, like Herbie Hancock got with him. It's like, oh, so, you know, we're rehearsing. Like, no, you play what you play on the stage. And so there was something about playing jazz was supposed to be in the moment.
Organic,
and it can't be in the moment if you know everything ahead of time that you're going to do. Because it's not organic. You're supposed to, you know, what you're creating for this audience is their experience, is your experience, is what we're doing in this moment. And then the next audience, don't get the same thing, because you're feeling something else. And that's the kind of thing that he wanted to have with his band, is that
epitomizes what Elvis Costello did. He wasn't feeling it, then he moved on to something else.
You want that tightrope, you know? I mean, so that's you know, that's a whole different type of thing.
That's, you know, definitely feeling to you, because you really have to say, what am I feeling in this moment?
And that's the thing. That's what true jazz and, you know, and Miles is. thought. That's the way he felt about it. You know,
like
I'm not saying that that's for everybody.
Right. Because I probably would be a little nervous with that one, but I think his whole thing was you already have the chops.
Yeah.
It's not like
you know music.
Yes.
You understand music. This is a language that we're speaking.
And
this is the key that we're in. We're going here, you know where these songs are going.
Yeah.
So go with it.
Yeah.
You know, and then I play something. I want you to not just say, okay, he played something. I want you to react.
Right.
Because we should be having this active conversation.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
You know, in front of the audience. We should be doing that. You know, and so that's that kind of. And if you make a mistake, it's part of the moment.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's part of it.
Say that's a whole nother philosophy. I mean, I know the live performance always has had a version of that.
Yeah.
But
it's rehearsed. It's like, Prince's band was always very, very rehearsed.
Then rush.
You know, right.
If you drop a note, it's like this big thing.
Yeah. So even if you decided on changes to the song.
Yeah, you
rehearsed those changes to the song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's the part that's a little bit different than, hey, we playing kind of blue.
Yeah.
All right. We're rolling. But I'm going to do something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And now I want you guys to react to what I did different.
Right. Yeah. You probably would throw something out there just to shake it up.
But that's kind of why jazz is kind of like that, meaning that it's especially people who are jazz aficionados, that it's important to know who played, what date it was played.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
And this is his play, and all the rest is kind of, so then you'll know, this is when they played.
Right.
And like this.
Right.
And this is when they play, and that makes it completely different.
Yeah.
So that, it's one of those type of things that's organic to that moment.
I like that.
So.
That's kind of sexy. All right, what do you think? Can you be too ugly or too awful?
I don't think you can. Send me your bad reviews. Please, send them.
And then what does perfection cost you? As an artist, again,
right.
If you are really, truly trying to express something, trying to figure out if it lines up with whatever these parameters are, what is it costing you? So we'd like to know what you think on the topic. We're always open for different opinions.
Yeah.
So make sure you drop it in the comments below.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about our Black Friday deals, hot off the press. We just figured this out this morning. We have a Sugar Fit Sweet CD deal, and that's $20. You get the CD. You get the some candy that epitomizes the Sugar Fit ethos.
Yeah.
You get a Sugar Fit ornament, which we will be creating ourselves. You get the sticker, and then you get a personal note from the band, from BPJ. So that is our Sugar Fit Sweet CD deal. And then we have the Sweet Tea deal where we add the additional t-shirt. Again, we'll give you a value for it. So you'll get well over what it costs. Check out the links below and
hey, you Sugar Fit. That's
you
what's
dig
about.
the vibe, be sure to
subscribe and Sugar Fit.
And Sugar Fit. Yeah. And we're wishing you love, peace, and
chicken grease and Sugar Fit.
And Sugar Fit.